The night was dark and heavy with rain. The forest around the small wooden cabin was silent except for the sound of the storm. Wind howled through the trees, shaking the branches like angry hands. Inside the cabin, a young man sat alone by the fire. He was used to silence, used to the loneliness of the forest, but tonight something felt different. The air felt heavy, as if something unseen was moving in the shadows. He leaned back in his chair and listened. For a moment he thought he heard something outside. A branch? An animal? No. It was different. Then it came again. A sound that didn't belong to the forest. A soft, desperate knock at the door. He froze. No one ever came here. The cabin was far from the nearest town. Visitors did not come in the middle of the night, and never during a storm like this. His heart began to beat faster. Who could it be? Why here? The knock came again, louder this time. Slowly he stood up and walked to the door. The wooden floor creaked under his weight. He reached for the handle but stopped. A strange feeling ran through him, a warning. His instincts told him to be careful. He hesitated for a long moment, then finally opened the door. What he saw made his breath catch. A woman stood in the rain. But she was no ordinary woman. Her tall figure glowed faintly in the dark. Her skin was pale, almost silver, shining in the flashes of lightning. She wore only a torn cloth, clinging to her body as rain poured down. Her long black hair was wet and tangled, sticking to her face. But her eyes were the strangest of all. They were not human eyes. They glowed softly like twin stars in the night. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was weak, trembling. "They are hunting me. Let me in." For a moment he thought he was dreaming. But the cold wind and heavy rain told him this was real. She looked terrified, her body shaking from the cold. He stepped back, unsure of what to do. His mind screamed questions. Who was she? What was she? But his heart pushed him to act. Without another word, he opened the door wider and let her inside. She stumbled forward, dripping water onto the wooden floor. The firelight touched her skin, and it shimmered faintly, almost as if she carried her own light inside her. He quickly closed the door, locking it tight. The woman stood near the fire, holding the torn cloth around herself. Steam rose from her wet skin. She looked fragile, but there was something powerful hidden in her. He could feel it. Who are you?" he asked in a shaky voice. She looked at him with those glowing eyes. For a moment she said nothing. Then softly she whispered, "Not from here." The words made his chest tighten. Not from here? What did that mean? His mind raced with impossible thoughts. Was she an escaped prisoner? A lost traveler, or something else? Before he could ask more, a strange sound came from outside. It was low at first, almost like metal grinding. Then it grew louder, echoing through the storm. A mechanical hum, heavy and alien. His blood ran cold. The woman's head snapped toward the window. Her eyes widened with fear. "They found me," she said in a whisper. "If they find me here, you will die too." The young man rushed to the window and looked out into the night. The forest, usually dark and quiet, now glowed faintly with strange lights. Between the trees, shadows moved. Tall, metallic figures, their eyes burning like red fire. They moved slowly, scanning the ground, searching. His breath caught in his throat. These were not men. These were not soldiers. These were machines or something worse. They moved with purpose, their heavy steps crushing the wet earth. The woman stepped closer to him. Her voice was urgent but soft. "You must stay silent. Do not make a sound. They can hear the smallest breath. They can smell fear." He turned to look at her. Water still dripped from her tangled hair, her skin glowing faintly. She looked weak, broken. Yet her presence filled the room with a strange energy. For the first time in his life, the young man felt both terrified and alive. The sound outside grew louder. Heavy steps crunched closer to the cabin. Strange lights swept across the walls. The hunters were near. He turned off the fire quickly, plunging the cabin into darkness. The room filled with silence. Only the sound of the storm outside remained. The woman stood perfectly still, her glowing eyes locked on the door. He stood beside her, heart pounding so loud he was sure they would hear it. The metallic footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a scraping sound right against the cabin wall. The hunters were outside, waiting, listening. The young man held his breath. Every second felt like an eternity. His muscles ached from standing so still. The storm outside roared, lightning flashing through the window, but inside, everything was frozen. The woman whispered, So quietly it was almost nothing. "If you let me stay, your life will never be the same. But if you send me away, they will kill me tonight." The man did not move. He only stared into her glowing eyes. And then, with a sudden bang, something hit the door. The cabin shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The hunters had found them. Cliffhanger ends. The cabin door shook from the heavy blow. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The young man's hands clenched into fists, his heart beating like a drum. He had never felt fear like this before. Someone was outside trying to get in. The woman stood perfectly still. Her glowing eyes did not blink. Her wet hair clung to her pale face, but her expression was calm, almost cold. She whispered, "Stay quiet. Do not move." The banging stopped. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. The only sound was the storm outside and the man's shaky breath. Then slowly, the heavy footsteps began to move again. The hunters walked around the cabin, scanning, listening. Strange red lights flickered across the windows, searching for heat, for sound, for life. The woman lifted her hand, and to his shock, the faint glow of her skin dimmed, almost disappearing. She made herself blend into the shadows. He copied her, pressing his back against the wall, trying to become invisible. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the hunters moved away, fading into the stormy forest. The strange hum of their machines grew distant. For now, the cabin was safe. The man exhaled, his knees weak with relief. He turned to the woman, his voice low but urgent. "Who are they? What do they want?" The woman's glowing eyes softened. She pulled the torn cloth tighter around herself, shivering as the last drops of rain slid down her skin. "They are hunters," she said quietly. "They hunt across worlds, and tonight they are hunting me." The man felt his stomach twist. Worlds? He wanted to laugh at her words, to call it madness, but after what he had just seen outside, he could not. Those machines, those glowing eyes were not from Earth. He knew it in his bones. "You're not human," he whispered. She tilted her head, watching him carefully. Then with a small nod, she said, "No, not human. Not from this world." The fire inside him sparked again. He stepped back, almost tripping over the chair behind him. An alien in his cabin. It was impossible, yet here she was, standing only a few feet away. She looked at the fireless hearth, her eyes distant, almost sad. "I was part of a ship," she explained slowly, as if choosing each word with care. "We crossed your skies, but we were attacked. My ship is gone. My people are gone. Only I remain." The man listened, his throat dry. She spoke with such certainty, with such sorrow, that he believed her. Her voice carried weight, as if every word was carved from truth. "Why here?" he asked. "Why come to my cabin?" Her glowing eyes locked onto his, and for the first time he felt something strange. A shiver, not of fear, but of recognition. As if she was looking deeper than his face, deeper than his body. As if she was seeing his soul. "Because you are human," she said simply. The words sent a chill down his spine. "What does that mean?" he demanded. She stepped closer, her eyes glowing brighter in the dim cabin. "Humans are different," she said softly. "Your kind is not like others. You endure. You adapt. You survive." He frowned, confused. "I'm just a man in a cabin. I'm not special." Her lips curved in the smallest, saddest smile. "You are wrong. I have seen many worlds. Stronger, faster, smarter species. But none are like you. You survive what should kill you. You bend, but you do not break. That is why they fear you. That is why I came to you." The man felt his chest tighten. Her words sounded like nonsense. But there was something in her voice, something in her eyes, that made him believe. He wanted to ask more, but before he could speak, a low hum vibrated through the walls of the cabin. The hunters were back, their machines sweeping the forest. The woman's expression hardened. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They can track energy. They can track blood." The man swallowed hard. "Then how do we survive?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, almost burning, but the touch steadied him. "We survive," she said firmly, "because you are human. And humans always find a way." Her words filled him with a strange fire. He had lived a simple life, quiet and small. But now in this storm, with this strange woman in his cabin, he felt something awaken inside him. Something old, something powerful. The sound outside grew louder. The hunters were closer again, moving with purpose. Their red lights cut through the night. The man blew out the lantern, plunging the cabin into near darkness. He moved to the window, watching as the hunters searched. The woman stood behind him, her glowing eyes locked on the forest. "They will return again and again," she whispered. "They will not stop until I am gone. And if they find me here," she paused, her voice heavy, "you will die with me." The man turned, his face pale but his jaw set. He looked at her, at the strange, glowing woman who had stumbled into his life. He should have been terrified, should have pushed her out the door. But something in him refused. "No," he said quietly, his voice steady. "If you're hunted, then so am I. We survive together." The woman's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. For a moment she seemed speechless. Then slowly she nodded. "Then together it will be." Outside, the storm raged. The hunters prowled the forest, closing in again. And inside the small cabin, a new bond had been formed, fragile, dangerous, but unbreakable. Cliffhanger end. As lightning split the sky, a deep metallic roar echoed through the forest. Something larger than the hunters was coming. The roar in the forest was deep and metallic, like a giant beast made of iron. The young man's heart pounded in his chest. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek outside. Lightning flashed, and for an instant he saw them clearly. The hunters were not just machines. They looked almost alive. Tall metal bodies, sharp edges like blades, and red eyes glowing through the storm. Their steps shook the ground. Some carried strange weapons humming with power. Others sniffed the air, their heads moving like predators catching a scent. The woman's glowing eyes narrowed. "They are closer than I thought," she whispered. "This is not a search anymore. This is an attack." The man's throat went dry. "Why you? Why chase you across worlds?" Her face darkened. "Because I betrayed them. I would not let them enslave another people. I fought back. I escaped. And now they will not stop until my blood is spilled." The words hit him like a storm. She had risked everything for others, and now she was hunted like an animal. The sound outside grew louder. The hunters spread out, moving with strange, unnatural speed. Their red lights swept across the trees, across the wet ground, across the cabin. The man knew the cabin would not hold forever. The wooden walls were weak, built for rain and cold, not for war. He clenched his fists. He had no weapons, no armor, no plan, but something inside him refused to give up. "We need to hide," he said quickly. The woman shook her head. "They can smell heat. They can hear a heartbeat. We cannot hide." The man looked around the room. His eyes fell on the firewood, the tools, the old iron nails hammered into the wall. His mind raced. He remembered the forests, the caves, the rivers. This was his land. He knew it better than any machine. "They don't know this place," he said firmly. "But I do. That's our chance." Before she could answer, the first blow came. Boom! The cabin wall shook as something heavy slammed into it. Cracks spread across the wood. The woman grabbed his arm, pulling him back. The door rattled on its hinges as a second strike shook it. Red light spilled through the cracks, blinding in the dark. "They are testing the walls," she said. "Next, they will break them." The man's mind raced. If they stayed, they would die. If they ran, they might have a chance. He grabbed a heavy axe from the corner, the only weapon he had. "Follow me," he said. She frowned. "You cannot fight them with that." "I don't need to fight them," he said through gritted teeth. "I just need to make them lose us." Before the next strike came, he pulled open a trapdoor hidden under the rug. A narrow tunnel led out beneath the cabin, dug long ago as a storm shelter. He dropped into it first, then reached up and pulled her down after him. The cabin above shook as the hunters smashed through the door. The sound of splintering wood filled the night. Red lights cut through the darkness, searching, scanning. But the tunnel was small and cold, carrying their scent away with the wind. They crawled through the dirt, the storm rumbling above. The tunnel opened into the forest, hidden by thick roots and moss. The man climbed out first, pulling the woman with him. Together they crouched in the shadows, breathing hard. Behind them, the cabin exploded in a burst of fire and light. The hunters tore through it like wolves, ripping it apart piece by piece. The woman's eyes glowed faintly in the night, her face hard with sorrow. "Your home? It is gone." The man clenched his jaw. His home was nothing compared to his life. And now, survival was all that mattered. The hunters spread out, their red lights sweeping the forest. Drones flew overhead, humming like angry insects. The man grabbed her hand and whispered, "This way." He led her through the forest, his boots sinking into the wet ground. He moved quickly but silently, weaving between trees, crossing streams to hide their trail. Every step was guided by instinct, by years of living on this land. The woman watched him closely as they moved. She saw how he chose the darkest paths, how he avoided dry leaves, how he masked their heat with the cold river water. Her glowing eyes softened. She had seen soldiers, fighters, warriors from many worlds, but never instincts like his. "You are more than you believe," she whispered as they ran. But there was no time for questions. A sudden beam of red light swept across the forest behind them. One of the hunters had caught their trail. The man pushed her forward. "Run!" They dashed through the trees, branches whipping against their faces. Behind them, the hunters roared, their heavy steps pounding the earth. Energy blasts lit up the night, searing holes through tree trunks. The man grabbed a thick branch as they ran and snapped it into a trap he had built long ago. When the hunter stepped forward, the branch whipped free, slamming into its chest. The machine staggered, buying them precious seconds. The woman's eyes widened. "You fight with the forest itself," he didn't answer. He just kept running. Finally, they reached a dark cave hidden by vines. The man pulled her inside, breathing hard. The hunters passed by, their red lights sweeping the ground, but the cave's stone walls hid their heat. For now, they were safe. The woman looked at him in the darkness. Her voice was soft but filled with awe. "Now I see. Humans. You survive not because of strength, but because of something greater. You think, you adapt, you endure. This is why they fear you." The man leaned against the wall, exhausted but alive. He looked at her glowing eyes, and for the first time he believed her words. Cliffhanger end. Outside the cave, the ground shook. The hunters had not left. Instead, something far larger was approaching, the massive ship he had glimpsed before. Its red lights cut through the forest like fire. The real hunt had just begun. The cave was dark, damp, and filled with silence. Drops of water fell from the ceiling, echoing like slow heartbeats. The young man leaned against the cold stone wall, chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. His hands were scraped, his clothes torn, but his eyes burned with determination. The alien woman sat across from him, her faint glow lighting the cave. Her torn cloth clung to her body, and her skin shimmered like silver under the shadows. Her glowing eyes studied him carefully, as if she were trying to understand something hidden deep inside him. "You saved us," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, I just ran." But she tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "No, you adapted. You used the forest, the river, the land. You moved as if you were born to survive." The man frowned. "What choice did I have? If I didn't, we'd be dead." Her voice grew softer, but there was something sharp inside it, like a blade wrapped in silk. "That is what makes you dangerous. Humans survive when no one else can. You bend, but you do not break. That is your secret power." Her words lingered in the cave like smoke. The man looked away, not sure if he believed her. He was just a man with an axe and a cabin, not a warrior. Yet she looked at him as if he carried something greater than strength. Before he could reply, the ground shook. The massive ship had landed in the forest. Its engines hummed with a deep, unnatural sound that rattled the stones. Red searchlights cut through the night outside, sweeping across the trees like burning eyes. The woman stood, her glow brighter now. "They brought the hound," she whispered. The man stiffened. "The what?" Her face hardened. "A beast made of flesh and machine. It can track life across miles. It will not stop. It will not rest." The man's chest tightened. He thought the hunters were bad enough, but now there was something worse. He looked at her, panic rising in his voice. "Then we can't hide here. They'll find us," she nodded. "Yes, but we cannot simply run forever. You must understand why they fear you. Only then can we fight." Her words struck him as strange. Why they fear him? He was no soldier, no alien, just a man in a forest. As if reading his thoughts, she stepped closer. Her glowing hand hovered near his chest. "Long ago, when my people first studied humans, they found something unusual. Other species, stronger, faster, more intelligent, fall easily when pushed beyond their limit. But humans grow stronger under pressure. Pain does not break you. It changes you. Hardship makes you evolve." Her glowing eyes locked on his. "This is why your kind has survived on a hostile world when others would have died. This is why they fear you." The man felt his chest tighten. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. Humans had always lived through storms, wars, hunger, and endless struggle. Somehow they always endured. Before he could answer, a low growl echoed outside the cave. It was not the sound of metal, it was alive. The hound. The woman's face grew pale. It is here. The man grabbed his axe, his knuckles white around the handle. Then we move. They crawled deeper through the cave, the walls tightening around them. The growl grew louder, closer. Rocks trembled under its weight. Suddenly, the cave shook as something massive slammed into it. A red light burned through the cracks. The hound was tearing its way inside. The man pulled the woman through a narrow tunnel, leading them out into the forest. The cold night air hit their faces. Behind them, the cave collapsed as the hound forced its way in, its roar shaking the trees. The man dragged her toward a cliff overlooking the river. The water raged below, black and wild. He looked at her. "Jump!" She stared at him in shock. "It will kill us." He shook his head. "No, it will hide us." Without waiting, he grabbed her hand and leapt. Together they plunged into the icy river. The water swallowed them whole, dragging them downstream. The current pulled at their bodies, cold and merciless. Above them the hound roared, but its red lights faded as the river carried them away. When they finally crawled onto the muddy bank, soaked and shivering, the woman looked at him with wide eyes. "You see?" she whispered, breathless. "This is what I mean. You use danger itself to survive. You make fear your weapon." The man coughed, pulling himself to his feet. His body ached, but he was alive. "I didn't think. I just did what I had to." Her eyes glowed brighter. "That is the difference. Others think until they freeze, but humans act, and because of that you endure where others fall." The man didn't reply. He only looked at the forest ahead, dark and endless. Somewhere in that darkness the hunters still searched. Somewhere above, the massive ship waited. The woman stood beside him, her torn cloth clinging to her wet body, her eyes burning like stars. "If we keep running, they will corner us. If we keep hiding, they will crush us. But if you use your gift, if you trust what you are, then we may have a chance." The man tightened his grip on the axe. He didn't feel like a hero, but something in her words lit a fire inside him. Maybe humans were more than they believed. Maybe survival itself was their weapon. Cliffhanger end. The forest suddenly glowed red as the massive ship's lights swept over them. From the shadows, dozens of hunters marched forward, surrounding the riverbank. The hound roared from the cliffs above. They were trapped. The riverbank glowed red as the hunters surrounded them. The hound's roar shook the cliffs above, its metal body scraping stone as it climbed down toward them. The young man gripped his axe tighter. His chest heaved with fear, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew panic meant death. The alien woman stood close, her glowing eyes darting from one enemy to another. "We are trapped," she whispered. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "Not yet." The hunters stepped closer, their red lights cutting through the mist. The hound leapt down from the cliff, landing with a thunderous crash that sent mud flying. Its body was part flesh, part machine, with jagged claws and a jaw that gleamed like steel. The man's mind raced. He could not fight them head-on. He had only his instincts, the land and the river. That would have to be enough. "Follow me," he said. Without waiting, he grabbed the woman's hand and pulled her toward the trees. The hunters roared, their weapons charging with blinding energy. Bolts of red fire tore into the ground, exploding dirt and stone where they had stood seconds earlier. They ran through the forest, branches slapping against their faces. The man's legs burned, but he kept moving, weaving between trees, choosing paths that would confuse their trackers. Behind them, the hound's roar echoed as it gave chase, tearing through trees like they were paper. The woman stumbled but kept running, her glowing skin a beacon in the dark. The man glanced back, cursing under his breath. "Dim your light," he hissed. She looked at him, startled, but then pressed her palms together. Her glow faded until she was almost invisible in the shadows. "Good," he said. "Now stay low." They slid down a muddy slope and splashed into another part of the river. The freezing water bit into their skin, but the man knew it was the only way to hide their heat from the hunters' machines. He pushed her under a fallen log, and they crawled through the water, the current pulling at their bodies. Above them, drones hummed, scanning, their red lights slicing through the mist. One beam passed so close that it brushed the water's surface. The woman's breath caught in her throat, but the man pressed a finger to his lips in silent. Still, invisible. The drone moved on. When the danger passed, they crawled out onto the far bank, soaked and gasping. The woman looked at him with awe. "You move like prey, but think like a predator," he shook his head. "I just know my land." That's all, but she didn't believe that. Her glowing eyes burned brighter. No, this is more. This is what my people feared. You turn your weakness into strength. You make the impossible possible. Before he could answer, the ground trembled again. The hound was close, crashing through the trees. Its roar tore through the forest, shaking the leaves from the branches. The man grabbed her hand again. Come on. He led her deeper into the woods, toward a place only he knew. The forest thickened, dark and tangled. Roots twisted like snakes across the ground. The air grew colder, damp with hidden fog. Finally, they reached it, a narrow gorge filled with jagged rocks. The man slid down carefully, pulling her with him. At the bottom, he crouched low and pressed a hand to the ground. This is where we make our stand, the woman frowned. Against that? With an axe? He shook his head. Not with an axe. With the land. He began moving quickly, setting traps he had built long ago for wild animals. Sharp branches tied with rope, stones balanced to fall, hidden pits covered in leaves. Simple tools, but deadly in the right hands. The woman watched, fascinated. You prepare the earth itself to fight with you. The man didn't answer. He only tightened the rope around one last trap, his hands steady despite the roar that grew louder with every second. The hound burst into the gorge, its red eyes blazing. Behind it, hunters marched in formation, their weapons glowing. The man's breath slowed. His heart pounded like a drum. Then, with a single motion, he pulled the woman behind him and whispered, Now. The first trap snapped shut. A sharpened branch whipped forward, stabbing into the hound's side. It howled, thrashing in pain. The hunters fired, but rocks tumbled from above, crashing down on their metal bodies. Sparks flew as one was crushed under the weight. The man grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her through the chaos. The gorge erupted with sound, roars, blasts, crashes. Every step was survival. Every breath was stolen from death. Finally, they scrambled out of the gorge and into the forest again. The man bent over, gasping for breath. The woman stood beside him, her glowing eyes filled with something new. Respect? Even awe. You fight with nothing, she whispered. And yet you win. He shook his head, sweat dripping down his face. Not winning. Just surviving. Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. That is what victory is. Survival. But their moment of relief ended quickly. Above them, the massive ship hummed, its engines shaking the trees. A deep voice echoed through the forest, metallic and cold. Human detected, eliminate. The man froze. The hunters weren't just after her anymore. Now they were after him too. Cliffhanger end. The forest lit up as dozens of red beams cut through the darkness, all aimed directly at him. The forest burned with red light. The massive alien ship hovered above the trees, its engines growling like thunder. Beams of energy swept across the ground, searching, scanning. Hunters marched through the undergrowth, their metal bodies glowing, their weapons alive with power. The young man stood frozen, his axe still clutched in his hand. The alien woman beside him glowed faintly, her torn cloth plastered to her skin. She looked at him with sharp, glowing eyes, her voice urgent. They have seen you now. You are no longer just a witness. You are a target. His stomach tightened. He had tried to hide, to run, to survive, but now the hunters were calling for his death. It was no longer her fight alone. It was his too. The woman placed a hand on his arm. You must choose. Leave me and maybe they spare you. Stay with me and they will hunt you until the stars burn out. The words cut deep. Leave her? After all they had endured together? After the cabin, the river, the gorge? His mind screamed to run, to survive on his own. But his heart was different. Why me? He asked quietly. Why would they care about a single man? Her glowing eyes softened, sadness flickering in them. Because you are human. My enemies have always feared your kind. They whisper of you as legends, fragile, weak, yet unbroken. And if you stand with me now, they will see that their fear was right. He stared at her, rain dripping from his hair, sweat burning his eyes. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was just a man with a cabin in the woods. But maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The sound of metal feet grew louder. Hunters moved closer, their red eyes slicing through the dark. The woman tightened her grip on his arm. There is one chance, she said. Far from here in the mountains lies a beacon. It is hidden, ancient. If we reach it, I can call for help. My people may still come, but the hunters will never allow us to reach it. The man's jaw clenched. So you need me to fight. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I need you to survive. Only you can lead me through this land. Alone I will fall with you. Maybe we reach the beacon, his heart pounded. This was the choice. Walk away and live a life of hiding, always haunted by this night, or walk forward into danger, with death waiting at every step. He thought of his cabin, now burned to ash. He thought of the hunters' voices, cold and merciless, calling him prey. And then he thought of her, this strange woman from another world who looked at him not with pity but with belief. Slowly he nodded. Then we go together. Her glowing eyes widened, surprised, then softened into something he had not seen before. Hope, she whispered. Then the hunters have already lost. Before they could move, the trees around them exploded with light. Hunters burst through the foliage, weapons blazing. The man grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the riverbank. Energy bolts tore into the earth behind them, setting trees aflame. The forest roared with fire and thunder. They dashed between the burning trunks, smoke choking the air. The man's lungs burned, but he kept going, dragging her with him. The hunters followed relentlessly, their red eyes never blinking. A blast struck the ground near them, hurling dirt and sparks into the air. The man stumbled but caught himself, shielding the woman with his body. His axe was useless against their weapons, but his instincts were not. He led her toward a ravine where the ground fell away into jagged rocks. At the edge, he stopped. The woman stared at him in shock. "We cannot go down there. It is death." He grinned, though his breath shook. "That's why they won't follow." He leapt first, sliding down the rocks, tearing his hands and arms on sharp stone. Pain seared through him, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving. The woman followed, her body glowing faintly as the rocks sliced at her legs. Behind them, the hunters reached the ravine's edge. They stared down with red eyes, calculating. Then, one by one, they began to climb after them. The man cursed under his breath. "They don't stop." "They never stop," the woman replied grimly. At the bottom of the ravine, a dark cave opened like a mouth. The man pulled her inside, the air cold and wet. The walls shook as the hunters climbed closer, their claws scraping stone. Inside the cave, the darkness swallowed them. The man's breath echoed in the stillness. He turned to her, his voice hard. "We'll reach your beacon, but you need to tell me everything. No more secrets." Her glowing eyes lingered on him for a moment, then she nodded. "I will tell you," she said softly. "I will tell you why humans are the one thing my people could never control, and why the galaxy fears your kind." The man's heart hammered in his chest. Answers. At last he would know the truth. But before she could speak, a metallic roar shook the cave. Red light spilled through the entrance as the hunters poured inside. Cliffhanger end. The man raised his axe. The woman's glow blazed brighter than ever, and the hunters charged. The cave shook as the hunters stormed inside. Their red lights cut through the darkness like knives, their metallic roars echoing off the walls. Sparks showered as their claws scraped stone. The young man stood tall, his axe gripped tightly in his hands. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. He was terrified, but fear no longer ruled him. Fear had sharpened him. Beside him, the alien woman glowed brighter than ever. Her torn cloth fluttered in the cave's cold wind, and her eyes burned like twin stars. She whispered, "If we fall here, the galaxy will never know what humans truly are." The hunters charged. The man moved first. He swung his axe not at them, but at the ceiling of the cave. The strike echoed, sending a shower of loose rocks crashing down. The front line of hunters stumbled, crushed under stone. "Run!" he shouted. They dashed deeper into the cave, the woman's glow lighting the path. Behind them, hunters scrambled, their claws ripping through stone. The hound's roar shook the tunnels, its red eyes blazing in the shadows. The cave twisted into darkness, then suddenly opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood an ancient machine, tall and broken, covered in moss and crystal. The alien woman gasped, her voice trembling. "The beacon." The man frowned.
"This thing can call your people?"
She nodded, her eyes glowing brighter. "Yes, but it needs time to charge. You must hold them back." The man tightened his grip on the axe. His body ached, his skin was torn, but his spirit burned. He turned to face the tunnel where the hunters advanced, their red lights drawing closer. The woman touched the beacon, her glow merging with its ancient circuits. The machine hummed to life, pulsing with strange energy. The man stood alone at the entrance of the chamber. The hunters stormed forward, their weapons blazing. He dodged behind stone pillars, leading them into tight spaces where their size worked against them. He swung his axe at ropes of rock, collapsing chunks of ceiling onto them. He splashed water from underground pools onto their weapons, shorting out circuits with sparks. Every move was survival. Every strike was instinct. One hunter lunged at him, claws raised. The man rolled under it and smashed his axe into a support column. The stone cracked, collapsing the wall onto the creature. Another came from the side, but he grabbed a loose crystal shard and drove it into the hunter's glowing eye. Sparks exploded as the machine fell. The alien woman watched him fight with wide, glowing eyes. She whispered to herself, "He does not just survive. He turns the world into his weapon." But the hound was not so easily stopped. It stormed into the chamber, its claws carving into stone, its roar shaking the walls. The man stood his ground, sweat dripping down his face. He glanced at the beacon. It glowed brighter but not yet complete. He looked at the woman. She shook her head. "Not yet. Just a little longer." The hound lunged. The man dove aside, barely escaping its snapping jaws. He grabbed a torch from the cave wall and thrust it into the beast's flesh side. The hound roared in pain, thrashing violently. The fire spread, the smell of burning flesh and metal filling the air. But the beast kept fighting. It slammed him against the wall, knocking the air from his lungs. His axe fell from his grip. The hound loomed over him, jaws wide. Then from deep inside, something awakened. A spark older than fear, older than weakness. His eyes hardened. Humans did not give up. He grabbed a jagged stone and drove it into the hound's throat. The beast howled, thrashing. He rolled away, snatching up his axe, and with a final scream, swung it into the beast's glowing core. The hound convulsed. Sparks exploding, then collapsed into the dust. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of the beacon. The woman gasped, her body trembling as the machine blazed with light. "It is ready," she cried. "Help has hurt us." The remaining hunters froze. Their red eyes flickered with static. One by one, they turned and fled, retreating into the tunnels. The massive ship above roared, then slowly lifted, its red lights fading into the stormy sky. The man stood panting, his body bruised, his clothes torn. The axe hung heavy in his hand. He looked at the alien woman as the beacon glowed brighter, sending its signal into the heavens. She stepped closer, her glowing eyes soft now, filled with gratitude. "Now I understand. Humans are not strong because of their bodies, not powerful because of their weapons. You are strong because nothing can make you break." The man shook his head, exhausted. "I'm no hero. I just did what I had to." Her lips curved into a small smile. "That is exactly why you are." The beacon's light filled the cave, pulsing like a heartbeat. The woman looked at him, her voice gentle but full of meaning. "My people will come. They will know what happened here. And they will know of you." He stared at her, silent. The forest, his cabin, his old life, it was all gone. What was left now was this moment and the choice of what came next. She extended her hand toward him. "Will you come with me? To the stars?" The cave trembled as the beacon's signal grew stronger. Outside, the storm began to break, the clouds parting to reveal a sky full of endless stars. The man looked at her glowing eyes, then at the night sky. His heart pounded with fear, with wonder, with something new. Hope. Final scene. Cliffhanger for future. He reached for her hand. The light of the beacon engulfed them both, and somewhere far beyond the stars something answered.